Good evening, and welcome to Rise of the Zombie Bugs, The Surprising Science of Parasitic Mind Control by Mindy Weisberger with Paula Croxson. We're delighted to have you all joining us tonight at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library. My name is Tim Smith, and I'm a supervising librarian at SNFL and your host this evening. Before I introduce tonight's speakers, I would like to thank the Stavros Niarchos Foundation for making programs like this possible. I would also like to remind you that if you don't already have a library card, it's easy to get one by visiting any desk in this building. Finally, I'd like to encourage you to visit NYPL's website and take a look at upcoming 7 Stories Up programs. We have an excellent lineup this season, including programs featuring new fiction, non-fiction, live music, and more. We would love to have you join us in this space again. And it's now my pleasure to introduce tonight's guest. Mindy Weisberger is a science fiction writer, editor, and media producer. She's written about science for Scholastic, CNN, Scientific American, Live Science, and Space.com. Weisberger has scripted and directed videos for the American Museum of Natural History, and she co-hosted the science podcast Life's Little Mysteries. Media appearances include NPR's Science Friday and Cheddar's Morning Bell. She lives on a cliff in New Jersey with a husband, 2 cats, and too many ukuleles. Paula Croxson is a neuroscientist, award-winning science communicator, and storyteller. She is president at Stellate Communications and a senior producer for the Story Collider. She has a PhD from the University of Oxford and is an adjunct assistant professor at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. She has appeared on numerous podcasts, science events, and storytelling shows. She plays the flute in 2 rock bands and has swum around Manhattan. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome tonight's guests.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure and a joy to be here and to be here with you, Mindy.
It's a pleasure for me to be here with you. The feeling is mutual.
So, who here is a science fiction fan or a zombie movie fan? All right, more science fiction than zombie movie. Wait, yeah, everything you're about to hear tonight is science fact.
That's right.
It's all true, however unbelievable it is. And I think what I'd like to do is start off by asking you, Mindy, maybe to paint a picture for us, to show us a little bit about how you got drawn into this world of zombie bugs.
All right. Well, I will share with you an example from 2021 from Princeton, New Jersey, during the emergence of brood 10 of the periodical cicadas. So for those of you who don't know, periodical cicadas, they emerge in cycles of 17 to 13 years. And unlike the annual cicadas that come out and sing every summer, periodical cicadas they have these deep black bodies and bright red eyes, and they're very, very striking. There is also a species of fungus that zombifies them and manipulates their behavior. And so in 2021, I knew that brood 10 was going to be emerging. There's a site in Princeton, Battlefield State Park, where there are trees that have been around since at least 1800, which is the earliest recorded instance of periodical cicadas coming out there. They've probably been there a lot longer than that. So that seemed like that would be a good place to go and see the emergence, which is spectacular because they come out in the millions and billions. But I was also going to look for zombies because I knew that wherever there were going to be periodical cicadas, there were likely going to be infected periodical cicadas. And so I went to this park, and big, like beautiful trees, idyllic location, and bodies everywhere. So, well, cicada bodies. Well, exoskeletons. So so just the husks of cicadas. So as you're walking on the grass, you hear a crunching sound because there are just thousands and thousands and thousands of shut exoskeletons. Because what periodical cicadas, they live underground for 17 or 13 years, depending on the species. And then when they come up as nymphs, and then they metamorphose into adults. So they shed their nymph exoskeletons and come out as adults. So the crunchy bits that are all around the grass, those were the exoskeletons that had been shed. At some point, scientists don't know exactly when, but at some point, the nymphs pick up spores of this fungus called Mesospora cicadina. And what it does is it multiplies inside the cicada. Doesn't really do much of anything at first. It's just kind of establishing itself and slowly and stealthily consuming their body tissues. But then it gets to the point where it multiplies so much that it essentially consumes all of their reproductive organs. The back end, it weakens their exoskeletons, so that the back end of the cicada kind of drops off, and what's left is an exposed mass of spores. So that's what I was looking for, and as it happened, so I'm standing in this field and looking around at the carnage of all of these exoskeletons, and of course there were adult cicadas that were on the trees and flying around. Something flew into my leg, and I noticed that it had this this big yellow plug on the back, and so of course I started like jumping up and down and yelling, I found a zombie, and there was a father and his young daughter there, and they were understandably a little startled, but I took that as an opportunity to call them over and say, come here, you want to see something really cool, and
an education moment.
Exactly, come meet a zombie. So actually wait, I have
yeah. Do you have a visual
slides
for us?
Yes, there it is. So that's my thumb over there. So as you can see, the back end of the cicada is just a solid mass of spores. And yet it is the cicadas still fly around. Not only that, they are still very, very into mating, and that is presumably part of the manipulation, part of the zombification that the fungus does to them. It creates this hypersexualized state that helps them spread spores to other uninfected cicadas and create more zombies.
Got it. Okay. So I have a question before we go any further into this fascinating story. I have so many questions. What is zombification? What do you mean when you say that?
What is zombification? Okay, if you want to talk about pop culture zombies and zombification, we could be here for 3 days about that. But when it comes to zombies of the natural world, zombification, as researchers refer to it in this context, is about the manipulation of a host's behavior by a type of parasite, and it manipulates its behavior in a way that only benefits the parasite. So in this case, the fungus changes the behavior of the cicada in a way that does not benefit the cicada at all, but helps the fungus to reproduce.
Got it. Okay, so the fungus in this case is interested in its own reproduction,
yes,
and the cicadas can't reproduce anymore because they've lost their reproductive
organs. Yes, those are all gone. Yeah, but they still try to mate.
Yeah,
they still give it a good try.
Yeah, well, good for them. They've got to go for it. No, just kidding. So it could be. Is it always a manipulation then of a natural behavior?
Well, the way it usually works is that the manipulation when we're talking about manipulation in zombies and zombification, it's very diverse. There are zombifying worms, there are zombifying fungi, there are zombifying viruses, there are zombifying wasps, there are zombifying flies, and they all have and there are many, many different mechanisms through which they can gain control of their hosts and how they can manipulate their behavior. But it's usually a series of small nudges. So what they're doing is they're not radically rewriting the neurochemistry of their host. What they're doing is they are manipulating something like a type of behavior that the host already has, and they are tweaking it in a way that makes it beneficial to them. So obviously cicadas as adults, they're pretty much, they have a very short window in which to mate. So adult cicadas are very interested in mating already. But what the fungus does is it kind of kicks that into overdrive. So what you end up with is with male cicadas that not only respond to the calls of females. What they do is they actually imitate the calls that females make to attract males to them. So female cicadas, the buzzing that you may associate with cicadas, that's a noise that males make. And what females do is they flick their wings, and it's kind of that's almost exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like a snapping sound. And so what scientists found was that male cicadas that were infected with this fungus, what they would do is they would also imitate that sound that females make. And males usually never do this. And they would do that so that that would draw males to them so that they would have a chance to mate even more.
Got it. Okay. So it was introducing almost a new behavior in the males that the females usually performed, as well as introducing more of that behavior in the females.
Right.
So a little bit of both then maybe. It's amplifying some natural behavior, it's introducing some new behavior.
Right.
I guess I'm thinking about the zombies that we know from movies, causing humans to adapt their eating behavior toward brains, for example.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, there are a lot of, I think that zombies in pop culture and in fiction, the genre really has exploded, like just in the last 10 years or so. It seems like right now, especially, zombies seem to be having a moment. We're getting a much broader range of creative interpretations of what it means to be a zombie and what can cause zombification, so it's interesting to see. But the thing is, there are still so many more examples in the natural world that science fiction and pop culture have not even touched yet, and I'm really excited to see, to see what people could do with that.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you become? Because it sounds like when you were out there with the cicadas, you were looking for zombies already. Oh, yeah. So how did you become interested in zombies and zombification? Was it because of the pop culture explosion or some other reason?
Well, I was into science fiction and horror long before I became a science nerd. So I, obviously, zombies were on my radar, and also, I went to film school. So obviously, I was as someone who was trying to make films for as small a budget as possible. I was, obviously very aware of filmmakers that did that and did that well. And of course, Night of the Living Dead is a wonderful example of that. And so zombies were on my radar, but the idea that there were zombies in the natural world was something that I just didn't know about at all. And it wasn't until I was at the Museum of Natural History, I was working on a video for an exhibit. It was a video about evolution. And in the course of my research, I came across the example of the zombie ant fungus, which, for those of you who know The Last of Us, that was the inspiration for the infected. And the cordyceps infection that transforms people into these hideous fungi-studded creatures. So that kind of blew my mind a little. I did not realize that there were organisms like this fungus, Ophiocordyceps, which manipulates ants. I just didn't know this was a thing. And then, as a science reporter, I had the opportunity to cover research that looked at other kinds of zombification. And just the more I found out about it, the more I realized just how many different kinds of zombies and zombifiers there were that I knew nothing about. And just it seemed like the more I found out, the more there was to learn about it. And that's pretty much what inspired me to write the book. The fact that just there was just so much. It was just such a rich well of grossness.
She's not wrong. It is the whole book is a rich well of grossness. It's really I surprised myself by enjoying it because there's some horrors in there.
Achievement unlocked.
And so another thing that got me thinking as you were talking about standing among these cicadas is it seems a little bit to me like maybe there are zombies everywhere all around us and I just haven't been seeing them. So is that true? Are there zombies out there right now?
Well, to a certain extent, yes. In general, I feel like insects kind of get overlooked more than they should be, just because they're not as big. They're easy to overlook. You have to really kind of make an effort to find them, and that's true with zombie insects too. So like if they're in a, let's say, a hypothetical zombie apocalypse, where there are hordes of human zombies, they're big and they're hard to miss. But Insect zombies, not so much. So for example, scientists that study Ophiocordyceps, the zombie ant fungus, these ants are very, very small, and and the course of zombification in the final stages leads them to climb up leaves and bite down on the underside. So you would have to actually flip over the leaf to find them. So scientists that do that, that's they mark out a plot, and that's what they do. They just one by one they just turn over leaves and they see what they find. And in those particular cases, if there tend to be favored spots for the fungus, because depending on light exposure, humidity, temperature, there are some spots that are just better for the dispersal of spores. So what they told me is that if you find a spot where you are finding some zombie ants, if you look close to that, you are likely to find more. That's in one part of the world, but there are also disco-eyed zombie snails, which have these incredible pulsating brood sacs full of parasites in their eye stalks. They are commonly found in parts of Europe. There are other parts of Europe where you can find caterpillars that viruses have melted into goo, and they are just dangling off trees. In the spring, on Instagram, I actually tend to see a lot of people posting photos from their gardens of caterpillars that have these like little white oblong things on their backs, and I saw a lot of people posting these photos and going, what am I looking at here? What is up with this caterpillar? What's going on? And that's a zombie caterpillar. So that's a caterpillar that actually has been zombified by a parasitic wasp that has laid eggs inside the caterpillar, which then hatched, which then grew, which then chewed their way out, which then spun their cocoons on the back of the caterpillar and are hanging out there until they become wasps. So zombies have actually they've been kind of hiding in plain sight for a long time. Actually, this one German naturalist Ferdinand Kohn in the 19th century, he wrote about a type of fungus that zombifies flies. Its name actually translates into the fly destroyer, and he wrote this was so ubiquitous. He wrote, everyone is familiar with the peculiar way of death of the common housefly. And the peculiar way of death.
Everyone's familiar with it.
Everyone is familiar with it.
Okay.
Yeah. It climbs. If they were in your house, you would usually find them hanging from the curtains, where they would, if they were, in the later stages of infection, they'd be full of fungus. They'd climb up the curtain, they'd hang out there and die, and then the fungus would gradually expand in their body until these whitish bands would sort of burst through the exoskeleton, and it would release the spores. And in fact, he went on to say that this strange way of death of the flies, which is known to every child, escaped only natural scientists, is not to be assumed. So he was speaking to the fact that it had not been scientifically described before he wrote about it in 1855, but every child knew about it, and so naturalists probably knew about it too, but he was the first to formally describe it.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, maybe some of those strange behaviors that we see around us could be explained by zombification if we just look closely enough at the insects instead of stomping on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I recently learned that we should not be stomping on lanternflies, which, is a whole different topic that we can... Anyway, moving on. So I want to talk more about these behaviors that you've been seeing, and we're sort of seeing some of these different behaviors that are natural to the animal happening, and then there are some that seem very exaggerated, like this climbing behavior in flies, right? They're not usually climbing animals. So maybe you can share with us a little bit about what are some of the patterns of behavior change that you have seen across all the different species you've written about.
Sure. So there are actually, as different and diverse as these mechanisms and forms of zombification are, there are some parallels, there are some overlaps, and climbing is definitely one of them, which is called summiting behavior. And this is something that is seen in different kinds of zombies. So for example, ants that are infected by Ophiocordyceps, the last thing that they do before they die is they find a leaf to climb, and then once they climb up to the leaf, they bite down on a vein of the leaf, and the fungus inside them essentially erodes their jaw muscles, so they can't unlock their jaws, and they die there, and the stalk comes out from behind their neck and poofs out its spores. But you can see the melting caterpillar over there on the upper right. That is a caterpillar that has been zombified by a baculovirus, which is a family of viruses that also arrests caterpillars' metamorphosis, makes them climb, and again, that is something that ultimately benefits the virus for its reproduction, because it also it dissolves the caterpillar into a puddle of goo, which then gently patters down onto the leaves below, where the goo contains millions of viral particles, and these are then eaten by other caterpillars and making more zombies. And but another thing is light attraction. So which actually in some cases may be connected to summoning behavior. But attraction to light is something that is seen across different kinds of zombifiers, again, because it's something that ultimately it's something that's benefiting the zombifier. So the disco-eyed zombie snails, which I mentioned earlier, over there on the lower left. So those are zombified by a type of worm called Leucochloridium. And what it does is it grows inside the snail, creates these brood sacs, which is what you see in the eye stalks. So those are not that's not what the snail's eyes normally look like. Those stalks are usually translucent, and what you can see in there right now, with the stripes and the bands of green and brown, those are brood sacs that are stuffed with parasitic worms. And so what the worms do is they pulse in the snail's eye stalks, and it looks very much like the wriggling of caterpillars. So these worms, actually, snails are their secondary host. They don't reproduce in snails. They have to reproduce in birds. So they get into the snails, and then they need to get back into the bird to be able to reproduce. And so over millions of years of evolution, they figured out this is the best way to do it. So create a visual show that attracts birds, and then they also change the behavior of the snail to make it attracted to light so that it wanders out into the open rather than hiding in the undergrowth, so that it's easier for birds to see it and snap up the eye stalks and have dinner. And
wow.
Yeah, and then the last example over here, which is a grasshopper with a hairworm. So hairworms also they infect terrestrial insects, but they reproduce in water. So what they do to get to where they need to go to reproduce is they manipulate their host, and scientists found out, I think this was just within the last 5 years, that they somehow influence their host attraction to a type of polarized light. And it's a light polarization that happens when light reflects off water. So these insects, which normally would not go near water, when the worm is ready to come out, the insect will seek out the nearest body of water and jump in. And then the worm will exit by any means necessary, usually from the back end, from the insect's body, and then swim off to reproduce, and the insect is kind of on their own there. They can survive that if they don't drown, but not necessarily.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm also seeing is, yes, there are patterns. There are some behaviors that seem to be manipulated again and again and again, like the summiting or the light seeking. But there's also a remarkable diversity, because this is driven by evolution.
Yeah.
So it might not necessarily be the straightest path or the least complex. So I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about one that I found really complex when I was reading the book, which is the orb-weaving spider behavior.
Yeah. No, that one's a great one. So there's a type of wasp that parasitizes orb-weaving spiders, and orb weavers are, if you know Charlotte from Charlotte's Web, the spider, yeah. The type, it's the classic spider web with the spokes and the string that goes around it. Yeah. So what happens when these? So the wasp lays an egg on the spider. It hatches, and it basically piggybacks on the spider as a larva. So it just kind of hangs out on the spider, kind of sipping its hemolymph, which is the spider's equivalent of blood, until it is ready to metamorphose. That's where the spider's behavior starts to change. And what happens is, instead of spinning its normal prey-catching web, the spider starts to spin a different type of web. It doesn't have the radiating spokes. It doesn't have the strand that goes around. Instead, it just has this. It has a very reinforced center, and once it's done with that web, the wasp larva pretty much drains the spider dry. The dead spider drops to the forest floor. The wasp makes its cocoon and hangs out in the web, which is actually perfectly constructed for keeping a cocoon supported and safe until the wasp is ready to come out. Now, what's interesting is that spiders, is that orb weavers do make a type of web like that when they're ready to molt. Because when they're ready to molt, they're vulnerable, and they also need that kind of supporting structure. So essentially what the wasp is doing is it is somehow chemically rewiring the spider's behavior so that at a time where the spider is not molting and would not normally make this kind of web, it goes ahead and makes this web, but it's not making it for itself. It's making it for the wasp.
Got it. So I want to ask you a little bit about the people who study this and how you study this kind of, not you obviously, but how the scientists that you have met along the way study this kind of behavior. Because it seems to me like sometimes the process of finding out how these things happen to the animals sort of mirrors the scientific process in terms of like there's layers and layers of understanding that we can uncover.
Definitely. Yeah, well, what's really interesting about this is how far back the study of zombie insects goes, and seeing the different stages that the science has gone through as the accumulation, as knowledge has accumulated, and as the tools have improved, and as scientists have been able to look deeper and deeper into the mechanisms of how zombification happens. So actually the cicadas are a good example of that, because the first scientist to actually describe a zombified cicada was Benjamin Banneker. And he was a free black man. He was born in 1731, lived in Baltimore County, Maryland. He was an astronomer. He was a mathematician. He was an assistant in the survey for establishing Washington, D.C. as the capital seat. And he published for 10 years. He published an almanac that included predictions of eclipses and the tides and weather. But he was also one of the first, if not the first person to document the 17-year cycle of periodical cicadas just based on his own observation. So he saw them for the first time when he was 17 years old. He noticed they came out again in the thousands 17 years later, and then again 17 years after that. So he predicted, okay, 1800, which was 17 years after that last emergence, we're going to see this again, and he was correct. He also what he wrote about them in his journal in 1800 was if their lives are short, they are merry. They begin to sing or make a noise from when they first come out of the earth till they die. And then he said, the hindermost part rots off, and it does not appear to be any pain to them, for they still continue on singing till they die, which is just a beautifully poetic way of describing it. But also that was the first description of a zombie cicada that had essentially lost its butt to the fungus. Although he did not know what it was, did not investigate it further, and so then after that, so over the next decades, we see scientists first figuring out that it's a fungus, and then describing the fungus, and then looking at how the fungus develops inside a cicada's body, and then how transmission happens, and forward and forward and forward until you get to the point in 2018, I believe, was when scientists realized that infected cicadas seemed to be behaving different sexually than uninfected cicadas did. And it was in 2019 where scientists were able to, and this is, again, like, how hard is it to study, to have a study subject that, you can only collect once every 17 years. But,
Yeah, that's a pretty risky research topic. If you miss the window, then you have to wait a while.
Well, luckily there are enough broods in the U.S. that pretty much every year there is going to be a brood to study. But it's a relationship that is pretty much impossible to cultivate in the lab, just because of the nature of their life cycle. So in 2019. Between capturing live specimens from multiple states and looking at specimens in museum collections and analyzing at the molecular level, scientists were able to figure out that the fungus was introducing a type of amphetamine called cathinone. So cathinone is something that previously was only ever known from one type of plant, the khat plant, KHAT, and it's something that people have used as a stimulant. And so what they determined was that this amphetamine was likely increasing the sex drive of the cicadas, and was also probably contributing to increasing their endurance, considering that their bodies were disintegrating. So that's just one example of just like the breadth of how long scientists have been studying some of these species, and just how that knowledge unfolds along the way. And the zombie ant fungus is also another good example of that, because again, scientists had observed the ants were usually already dead at the time and had the fungus sprouting from them, but it was also in 2019 where scientists figured out just how far back that relationship goes. So here's a zombie ant, and the leaf has been flipped. So if you can imagine in real life, this leaf would have been upside down, and the ant would have had its mandibles clamped around the vein of the leaf, which you can kind of see there. So in 2019, scientists discovered a fossil leaf dating to 48 million years ago from the Messel pit in Germany. And on this leaf, you can see the veins of the leaf. Along the veins, the arrows are indicating some of them. There were scars that were pretty much identical to the types of scars that were left on these leaves by zombie ants today. So this suggests
fossilized chomp marks.
Fossilized, exactly. The chomp marks are still there. So 48 million years ago, there were likely there were Ophiocordyceps zombifying ants.
Wow, goodness, that humbles me a little bit. They've been around a lot longer than we have, apparently.
A lot longer, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm also very curious about the people who study the zombies and the zombifiers. Like, what are these scientists like? It sounds like they have to be tenacious. Did you meet any characters along the way?
Oh boy. Well, one of the scientists that I met, Dr. Charissa de Becker, who is based in the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands, she studies Ophiocordyceps. And she told me about the time that she and her group were able to actually cultivate the fungus in the lab, which had not been done before then. And they threw it a birthday party. They had they had cake because they were able to grow fungus in a plate. So I think in general, I mean, obviously any kind of science involves patience, involves doing work that is in some cases unprecedented. But for zombie science is still a fairly new field in terms of just how, in terms of really getting to the neuroscience underpinnings of it. It really is just in the last couple of decades that scientists have really started unpacking that. So I think, I don't know, I mean, I think that there's maybe an aspect of being drawn to the body horror element of it. This one entomologist at the Natural History Museum of London, he studies the relationship between the wasps that zombify caterpillars, and he said that his road in that direction started because he was collecting caterpillars, and he happened to collect one that something came out of, and which was an unexpected surprise that, I guess...
Yeah, that would cause me to put it down.
Well, that's the thing. So I think there's a certain personality type that responds to that in a more positive way. And so what he said, he said, sometimes instead of getting a moth when you rear the caterpillar, you get a nice little wasp that comes out instead. And that's what converted me to the dark side. Those are his words. For some of us, it's more interesting when you get the wasp out than the moth.
I guess that tells us what we need to know.
Yeah.
And are these the chest burster style
These are the
wasps?
chest bursters, yes.
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 So
I
I think
that too. There we go.
yeah.
So yeah, this is what they look like. So all of yes, the wasp, as you can see, lays many eggs inside the caterpillar. Each of those little cocoons that you see on its back is a wasp.
And they have a sort of weird symbiotic relationship. So there's you're going to describe this better than I do, but there's sort of relationship between the wasp and a virus within the caterpillar.
Right. So yeah, the wasps aren't doing this on their own. Actually, millions of years ago, the wasps that parasitize these caterpillars, they domesticated a type of virus called poly-DNA viruses, or PDVs. And what the virus does, so essentially the virus reproduces in the wasp. So it's actually in the female wasp's inner reproductive organs. There are special cells where the virus reproduces. And what it does is it is essentially the first line of paving the way for the wasp young to thrive and grow inside a living caterpillar, because obviously, as you might expect, there is going to be an immune response if someone lays an egg inside you. And what the virus, hopefully. And so when the female wasp lays her eggs, along with the eggs and the fluid surrounding the eggs, there's some venom, and there's also fluid containing viruses. And what the viruses do is they essentially deactivate part of the immune system. So they're disabling the immune response that the caterpillar would normally have, so that the larvae can start to grow. And essentially, without that, the immune system would just destroy them before they were able to get big enough to actually pop out and make their cocoons.
It's actually pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely found myself getting more and more drawn in by this, and slightly less horrified, but still horrified.
But there's a benefit in it for the virus too, because the virus cannot reproduce inside caterpillars. It has to reproduce inside wasps. So it's not just the wasp that's benefiting from this as well. It is a very a good example of a very symbiotic partnership.
Yeah. Okay. So at least the wasp and the virus are co-benefiting.
They're doing okay. They're coming out of it okay.
Caterpillar, not so much.
No.
Yeah. So a lot of these zombifications seem kind of pretty horrific from the point of view of the host, but that's a really clear example of where there's a lot of benefit coming for the other organisms involved. So, I guess my next question for you is zombifying behavior, is it always harmful?
Yeah, it's in the zombifier relationship. The zombie really never benefits per se. They may survive. There was actually a zombie ladybug that went kind of viral on TikTok in 2021. I don't know if you came across that. No, okay. Her name was Ladyberry. So the content creator, her name is Tiana Gayton. I think she's Tiana the Bug Lady on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and everywhere. Anyway, so she was at a grocery store in LA looking at the organic cilantro, and she saw a ladybug hugging what looked like a cocoon. And so that was a ladybug that had been zombified by a parasitic wasp, different species from this one, because when the larvae came out, it was just one larva. When it came out of the ladybug, it spun a cocoon nearby, but because of that particular wasp's type of manipulation, once the larva was out, the ladybug was compelled to guard the cocoon, which keeps predators away. So which is interesting, because it's zombification that happens when the zombie has already, when the zombifier has left the body. But the ladybug was still, doing guard duty. So Tiana Gayton, she saw this and she decided she was going to rescue the ladybug. So she took it home and she gently tried to separate it from the cocoon, and it kept trying to go back to the cocoon because it was zombified. But she separated again, and she eventually was able to get it to stay away from the cocoon. And she gave it water and she fed it. I don't know what she fed. She nursed
cilantro, hopefully.
She nursed it back to health. Yeah, right. And then she, she made a video where she took it to the local park and let it go, or it was probably eaten by a bird the next day. But anyway, so that so Ladyberry recovered from being a zombie and got something that most zombies don't get, a second chance.
Yeah, amazing. What a very caring TikToker. So, I mean, we should all be so lucky if we become zombies to have a TikToker take care of us. But most likely we won't. So how do you think you would fare in the event of a zombie apocalypse? Do you feel better prepared now with all of this knowledge?
Are we talking slow zombies or fast zombies? Because slow zombies, I might be able to handle myself.
Well, what's most scientifically accurate? Is it a slow zombie? Because I'm seeing a lot of sort of spreading of zombie spores and things like that. They feel more like slow zombies to me, but I've seen some fast zombies in science fiction. So
yeah, I mean, I think most of the real world zombies tend to be slow moving. So yeah, if we're trying to keep to reality here in our hypothetical zombie apocalypse, yeah, so they'd probably be slow zombies. I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know if I've learned anything specifically from these examples. I think more just that if you see someone starting to behave a little strangely, even if on the outside they look normal, that's probably that's probably a good clue that maybe something's not right. I don't know. In general, I tend to plan ahead and overthink things, so I think that would be good in a zombie apocalypse. But
that might prepare you well for it. Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know. I think maybe the probably the best training I got for it, surviving a zombie apocalypse is not so much from this book, but from actually being in a union. Because honestly, no, and I think New Yorkers would probably know this, that community coming together is a powerful thing, and that is something that especially in a dire situation, in a looming apocalypse, coming together with people is the probably best course forward, and the one that is most likely to result in survival.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Donate to your local food bank, folks.
And join a union.
It's not a zombie apocalypse, but it is it's still good to stay in community always, right? Always. Yeah. What would the CDC say?
What would the CDC say? Well, as actually funny you should mention that.
We did prepare this in advance.
Oh, wait. I was gonna skip forward, but I want to share this with you guys first. So this is actually this is what the
snail.
This is what the disco-eyed zombie snail looks like. So this is what these each of those brood sacs in its eye stalks is stuffed with hundreds of tiny larvae. And so this looks a lot like a caterpillar that's just inching its way along a leaf, and especially to a bird that is looking for lunch, that would be a very attractive sight.
Very attractive.
Yeah.
Well, it's very mesmerizing.
Yeah. There are many of these on YouTube, and actually, the more disturbing ones I've seen are when a snail is parasitized by two different species. So you get two different because the different species have different colors of patterns of brood sacs. So you have a different one in each eye. That's really neat. But anyway, the CDC. So anyway, in 2011, the CDC went all in on zombies as a form of outreach, as a way of getting people to think about disaster preparedness. So they had posters, they had a graphic novel, and this was something where they said they were very clear on their website. We are not suggesting that there is a zombie threat that people need to worry about, but that this is just a way to get you thinking about disasters and emergencies and pandemics and what you can do to be prepared.
Awesome, awesome. And so, yeah, my last question for you before we open it up to the floor for more interesting questions is yeah, what does all this mean for us? Are we at risk of a zombie invasion that will affect humans, or is this an insect-only party?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing here, like all of these examples, these are the result of millions of years of evolution. And so, and in The Last of Us, this is something that they touched on in the TV show, right? So in season one, season one, episode one started with a flashback where there's a talk show, and I think it was a mycologist who was, being asked about what's the next big thing that we need to worry about, and they mentioned that because of climate change and the fact that Earth is warming, fungi that were formerly not able to survive well in our warm mammalian bodies might become more acclimated to higher temperatures and might be able to infect us. And that was sort of the foundation for why this zombie ant fungus in the world of The Last of Us was able to adapt to infect people. However, because that relationship evolved millions and millions of years ago and has evolved and specialized to the point where scientists say now that as far as Ophiocordyceps is concerned, it's pretty much one species of Ophiocordyceps, one species of ant. So it can infect other types of ants, but it can only zombify one species. That's a very, very specific relationship. So the idea that a species that is that good at zombifying an ant could make this jump to manipulating human behavior, which is arguably significantly more complex. I don't think that's anything we need to worry about in the immediate future.
That's just as well, because we have many other things to worry about.
Yes, we do. We do. Thankfully, zombies shouldn't be one of them.
Yeah. I would love to hear if anybody sitting here has a question.
I'm going to bring around. I actually have a little contribution. There is a member of the cordyceps family, larger family, Ovaria bassiana, which has been used in greenhouses for a long time against the insects. They just fumigate, basically. And it's been recently, and it actually infects a bunch of different species. And somebody recently discovered that it infects bedbugs. And there is a bedbug treatment with the spores.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's definitely a multi-species.
Oh, well, it can infect them. It just doesn't manipulate their behavior. So this, Ophiocordyceps and cordyceps are large groups.
I don't know if it manipulates their behavior, but it infects them, and then they carry the spores into their nest.
Yes.
And then it kills all their companions, basically. So within 2 weeks or something, they're all dead.
Okay. I think that's excellent news, both that it can do that and that there aren't zombie bedbugs wandering around the city. So I'm quite grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and actually using zombifiers as a form of pest control is something that actually has been explored. There's a type of zombifying fly called forward flies that targets fire ants. And in fact, when they show up, they don't even necessarily have to actively infect the ant. The appearance of forward flies near a fire ant nest just causes total disarray. So it disrupts their foraging strategies. And so essentially what that does is that helps in their native habitats. That's what keeps fire ant populations from overwhelming the ecosystem and allows other ants to kind of get a foothold there too. So this is something that the USDA was looking into as a way of combating the invasive fire ants that are a problem in some parts of this country here.
Very cool. Thanks for that.
I was wondering if there was any natural antidote that some of these would-be zombified can marshal in their own defense.
Well, actually, there's a type of wasp that zombifies cockroaches, and it has actually a very different approach from many of these others. It stings them directly in the brain, and it delivers a payload of venom, and what it does is it essentially deactivates the cockroach's ability to walk under its own power. So once the wasp does that, it waits a couple minutes. The cockroach is very docile. It can then lead the cockroach by its antenna back to a burrow where it walls it in with its young, which then it basically, drinks it until it's ready to metamorphose, and the cockroach dies. But cockroaches can actually protect themselves against these wasps with kicks. So scientists, there is absolutely amazing high-speed footage of this in action, where scientists put them in little arenas in the lab, and you can see, and the cockroaches, it's like a roundhouse kick with a really big follow through, and roaches that did that, I think 65% of the roaches that were able to kind of kick their way to freedom, and after a certain point, the wasps just gave up, and they were not zombified.
Amazing. And another tool in our toolbox to protect
kicks.
ourselves in the event of a zombie apocalypse.
Yep.
I see a hand over here.
So what questions still remain about the zombification process that your wish would be answered soonish?
Oh, so many questions. In a lot of ways, the precise mechanisms for how the behavior manipulation happens is still not known. I mean, in some cases, you've got like a sting to the brain. That's pretty direct. The cathinone, finding cathinone in the cicadas, that's also something that's fairly specific. But in a lot of ways, it's like scientists are able to identify the molecules or the compounds that are changing in the zombie's body, and how and they know that is linked to the behavior change, but it's not necessarily clear if the zombifier is introducing that compound or if they're making their host produce it themselves. So that's actually one question that is really interesting. So like for the orb-weaving spiders, for example, what happens right before the spider starts spinning that web is its body. The scientists know that its body is flooded with a hormone called ectosteroids, and that's something that's usually released when the spider's ready to molt. So, but they still don't know, is that something that the wasp is producing and then injecting, or are they inducing it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
Wait. Two more, but I also see a new hand here.
I do want to.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe, if that's okay.
Yes. What about higher level organisms? What about birds, mammals, reptiles? Are they affected as well?
That is an excellent question. So you're there, not by any of the zombifiers we've seen so far, but there's always a but. The rabies virus is something that affects mammals, and it does affect their behavior. So there are a couple of types of rabies. In the furious form of rabies, what happens is in the later stages of disease, you see a lot of heightened aggression. You also see a lot of drooling, foaming at the mouth. And that also aids in the transmission of the virus, because there are a lot of viral particles in an infected animal's drool. And if you combine having a lot of drool and being really bitey, that's that's a recipe for heightened transmission of the disease. Yeah. And then of course there's Toxoplasma gondii, which is something that it reproduces in cats, but it can live in many types of mammals and birds and reptiles. For a long time, it was known that that when it infected rodents, it would manipulate rodent behavior to make them attracted to the smell of cat urine, which is something that's usually a deterrent to them. And that would mean they would be bolder around cats. They would be more likely to be eaten by a cat, which is exactly where Toxoplasma gondii needs to be in order to reproduce. And now in the last 5 or 10 years or so, there have been more studies that have been coming out that show that in other animals, there are signs of behavior manipulation too. So hyena cubs, for example, that carry Toxoplasma gondii are bolder around lions and are more likely to be eaten by lions. And chimps that have Toxoplasma gondii are less fearful around leopards. And there have even been some studies looking at people, because by some estimates, about 2 billion people worldwide carry Toxoplasma gondii. That doesn't mean they have toxoplasmosis. It does not always cause disease, but even people that are carrying it that don't show any symptoms, there have been some studies that show that there may be tendencies to more to behavior that is more risky. But it's still early days for that kind of research, and because human behavior is so complex and there are so many factors that are involved in shaping human behavior, it's a little early to tell if there's a direct line between that.
We only really have time for one more, so I just want to give, if anybody who hasn't asked has one final question. Okay.
So in your book,
Yeah.
what was your favorite, what was your favorite study or zombie? What's the one that you were just like, wow?
My favorite zombie. Oh my God. I have to say, I mean, like the disco-eyed zombie snail will always have a special place in my heart. There's just something that is just, it's just so, there's something beautiful and terrible about it. So it's there's the body horror element, which of course, it's just something that you can't look away from it. But also just the whole infection process and the life cycle of leucochloridium, and the fact that it has to get from a snail back to a bird is just something that's it's just so fascinating that has been folded into the way that it manipulates snail behavior.
All right. Thank you so much, Mindy,
Thank
for
you.
sharing all of this knowledge with us.
Thank you so much. Oh, and if you like science storytelling, Paula is the host of Story Collider and an executive producer there, and they put on shows regularly, and you should go see them.
Please do. We would love to see you at one of those shows. And I believe, you're going to talk about the books, right?
Yes, so we do have copies of the book available for sale down there, and perhaps Mindy will be willing to sign some of them as well, if you ask nicely.